Tonight, King Solomon's Mines continues, so a quick recap. Alan Quatermain is our hero. He's an adventurer and white hunter based in Durban, in what is now South Africa. He's approached by aristocrat Sir Henry Curtis and his friend Captain Good, seeking his help finding Sir Henry's brother, who was last seen traveling north into the unexplored interior on a quest for the fabled King Solomon's Mines. Now, Quatermain has a mysterious map purporting to lead to the mines, but he has never taken that very seriously. However, he has agreed to lead an expedition in return for a share of the treasure, or a stipend for his son if he himself is killed along the way. Now, Quatermain has little hope that they will ever return alive, but he reasons that he has already outlived most people in his profession, so dying in this manner at least ensures that his son will be provided for. They also take along a mysterious native, Umbopa, who seems more regal, handsome, and well-spoken than most porters of his class, but who is very anxious to join their party. Traveling by ox cart, they reach the edge of the desert, but not before a hunt in which a wounded elephant claims the life of one of their servants. They continue on foot across the desert, almost dying of thirst before finding the oasis shown halfway across on the map. Reaching a mountain range called Suleimanberg, they climb a peak, one of Sheba's breasts, and enter a cave where they find the frozen corpse of Jose Silvestre, the 16th century Portuguese explorer who drew this very map that they are following in his own blood. That night, a second servant dies from the cold, so they leave his body next to Silvestre's to give him a companion, they say. They cross the mountains into a raised valley, lush and green, known as Kukwanaland. The inhabitants have a well-organized army and society, and they speak an ancient dialect of isiZulu. Kukwanaland's capital is Lu, the destination of a magnificent road from ancient times. The city is dominated by a central royal kraal. They soon meet a party of Kukwana warriors who are about to kill them when Captain Good nervously fidgets with his false teeth, making the Kukwanas recoil in fear. Thereafter, to protect themselves, they style themselves as white men from the stars, sorcerer gods, and they are required to give regular proof of their divinity, considerably straining both their nerves and their ingenuity. Chapter 6, we enter Kukwanaland. Good groaned with fear. As he often did when he was nervous, he pulled his false teeth out and he let them snap back into his mouth repeatedly. Seeing this, all the Kukwanas gave a cry of horror and jumped back. "It's his teeth," whispered Sir Henry. "Take them out, Good." He did so, slipping them into the sleeve of his shirt. The old man was drawn toward Good by curiosity. "How is it that a man whose legs are bare, who grows hair on one side of his face, and has one shining eye, can make his teeth move out of his head and back?" "Open your mouth," I said to Good. He grinned at them, showing them his empty gums. The men gasped. Good turned his head and slipped his teeth back in. He grinned again. The young man who had thrown the knife gave a howl of terror. I see you are spirits," the old man said. "Pardon us, oh my lords." "We grant you pardon," I said, going along with their mistake. "It's true we are spirits. We come from another world. We come from the biggest star that shines at night." They groaned in astonishment. "We come to visit you and to bless you," I said. "But you welcome us by throwing a knife at the head of him whose teeth come and go. How should we judge the man who would do such a terrible thing to us?" "Oh, spare him, my lord," the old man said. "He is the king's son." "Maybe you doubt our power," I said. "I will show you the magic tube that speaks, and you will doubt no longer." I held up a rifle. On a rock about 70 yards away, I spotted a small antelope. I pointed. "I will kill that buck without moving," I said. "It is not possible," they answered. I aimed the rifle. I knew I'd better not miss. Bang! The buck fell dead. The Kukwana men cried out with terror. "You want meat? Go and fetch the buck," I said. "I do not speak empty words." "You are wizards indeed," the old man said. "We will bring you to the king. I am Infaru, son of Kafa, once a king of the Kukwana people. This youth is Skraga, son of Twala, the great king." "We are ready to meet your king," I said. "But play no tricks on us, or the magic tubes will talk with you loudly. Beware. They at once took up all of our goods except the guns, which they didn't dare to touch. Even grabbed Good's neatly folded clothes. Give me those, he said. I want to put them on. Umbopa translated. Will the Lord cover his white legs from the eyes of his servants? Infidus asked. Have we offended the Lord? I almost exploded with laughter. Now look here, Good, Sir Henry said. You can't put your trousers back on. They want you the way you are, in your underwear. Yes, I said, and with whiskers on one side of your face. If you change, they might think we're fakes. They might decide to kill us after all. Good sighed and marched off in his underwear. All afternoon we traveled along the roadway. I asked Infidus who made the road. It was made in old times. No one knows who or even when. Not even the wise woman Gagool. How long have your people been here, then? I asked him. 10,000 moons, he said. We settled here and became powerful when King Twala calls his soldiers. Their plumes cover the plain as far as an eye can see. Who do his armies fight with? Warriors come from the north. We slay them. Some years ago we also fought a civil war, but there are people battling amongst themselves. How did that happen? He told me that King Twala, his older brother, was one of a pair of twins. Twala, the younger and weaker baby, was hidden away. Imotu became king when his father Kafa died, but a famine came on the land and everyone was hungry. The people spoke against Imotu. Then Gagool, the terrible woman, hunter of witches, said that Imotu was no king, that Twala is to be king. She led Twala out and showed the people that around his waist was tattooed a snake, the symbol of the son of a king. The people were mad with hunger. They shouted for Twala to be king. Imotu came out of his hut to see what was happening. He was followed by his wife and his little son, Ignosi. At that moment, Twala, his own brother, ran to him and stabbed him through the heart. The people all shouted, Twala is king! Twala is king! And so did Twala kill Imotu's wife and his son Ignosi also? I asked. Nah, they ran away, he told me, but no one would give them food. They went off toward the mountains where they must have died. If Ignosi had lived, he would be the true king of the Kukwana people. There ahead is the town where Ignosi and his mother were last seen, Infidus said. There we shall sleep tonight, if indeed you people of the stars sleep. And we are among the Kukwana, I said. We do as the Kukwana do. I turned around to speak with the others and almost ran into Umbopa. He had been following close behind, listening with great interest to what Infidus had been saying. The expressions on his face were strange, as if he were trying to remember something from long ago. When we reached the village, we saw many soldiers marching out toward us. Sir Henry was alarmed. Looks like we're in for a warm reception, he said. Let not my lords be afraid, Infidus said. These soldiers are under my command. They are coming to greet you. We went on, but we were feeling quite nervous. Half a mile from the gates of the village was a stretch of land sloping upward from the road. Each company of 300 men stood in formation with their spears and their plumes shining in the sun. By the time we arrived, 12 companies awaited us, 3,600 men. They were powerful warriors, each more than 6 feet in height. On their heads they wore black plumes like those of our guides. They wore belts of white oxtails around their waists. Each carried a shield about 20 inches across, metal covered with gray oxhide. For weapons, they had short, heavy spears that were not made for throwing, but for stabbing. Each man also carried 3 heavy knives that weighed 2 pounds each. One knife hung at the waist, and the other 2 were fixed to the back of his shield. He could hit a target with these 50 yards away. As we passed by, each group of men would raise their spears in the air and roar, Koom! Koom! This was the royal salute. Then they fell into march behind us. These are the Greys, Infidus told us. We called them not because of their gray shields. They are the best of the king's warriors. The women of the town stood and watched us arrive. They stared at Good's beautiful white legs, which made him very embarrassed. Infidus led us to a comfortable hut and told us to rest. There were couches of tanned skins to lie on and water to wash in. Soon the villagers came in with food, meat, roast corn, and honey. Infidus and Scraga came to dine with us. The old man was polite, but I could see that the king's son was growing suspicious of us. If we ate, drank, and slept like men, he may have thought, maybe we were not from another world after all. "Let's ask them about my brother," Sir Henry said. "Not yet," I warned. "We won't say anything about that until we see what happens." King Twala, Infidus told us, was in the main town, Lu, getting ready for the annual feast. All the warriors would attend a parade before the king. We will start for there tomorrow. Chapter 7, Twala the King. As we marched along King Solomon's road, the villages became numerous. Hurrying past us were many thousands of warriors. They were all headed toward Lu for the big festival. Among the Kukuanas, every able man is a soldier. At sunset on the second day, we stopped to rest on a hill. From there we could see the town of Lu. It was an enormous place, 5 miles around, smaller villages surrounding it. A river ran through the center of the city, and beyond was a horseshoe-shaped hill. 60 or 70 miles away, we could see 3 high snow-capped mountains that jutted up from the plain. Solomon's road ends at those mountains, Infidus told us. We call them the 3 witches. "Why does it end there?" I asked him. "Who knows?" he answered with a shrug. "The mountains are full of caves, and there's a great pit between them. The wise men of old used to get what they wanted there. Now it is where we bury our kings, the place of death." "What did the wise men come for back then?" I asked. "You lords from the stars do not know this?" he asked me suspiciously. "In the stars we know many things. I have heard that they came for bright stones and yellow iron." "I do not know this," Infidus said. "Gargool knows. She is as wise as you are." When he moved away, I said to the others, "That's where Solomon's diamond mines are." Umbopa said in Zulu, "Yes, these diamonds are there. You shall have them, since you white men are so fond of toys and money." "How do you know that, Umbopa?" I demanded. "I dreamed it." And then he walked away. "He knows more than he is saying," Sir Henry said. "Has he heard anything of my brother?" "He has asked any Kukuana he could, but they all say no white man has ever been in this country before." "How could he have reached here anyway?" Captain Good said. "We only got over the mountains ourselves by a miracle." "I still think somehow I shall find him," Sir Henry said, but his face was sad. Darkness, as you probably know, comes suddenly in the tropics. There is no twilight. We waited for the moon to rise before continuing on to Lu. We could see the thousands of campfires glowing across the plain. They seemed endless. Soon we reached the gates of the city. Infidus gave a password, and we crossed the drawbridge safely. We walked for half an hour through a city of grass huts before we reached the place where we were to stay. We entered the courtyard, and we found that a hut had been assigned to each of us. We washed. Women from the village brought us food. We ate and we drank. Then we asked that all our beds be brought to one hut. We weren't taking any chances. Weary from our long journey, we slept until the sun was high. But one of us always kept watch. We were told to get ready to meet the king. "I'd like to get ready by getting my clothes back," Captain Good said, but his trousers had been taken to the king. We washed and combed our hair, Good even shaved. Only the right side of his face, though, of course. Once we'd eaten breakfast, Infidus came to say that Twala was ready to see us now. I decided to give him a gift of one of the light Winchester rifles. We were taken to a very large field surrounded by huts. The largest hut was where the kings lived. The field was filled with thousands and thousands of warriors. They stood like statues, holding their shield and spears. We seated ourselves on the stools in front of the great hut and waited. The air was dead silent. 8,000 pairs of eyes were watching us. Finally, King Twala came out of the big hut. He was very tall, and he wore a tiger-skin cloak. His face was cruel and ugly, with only one eye. He wore a shirt of chain armor, and he carried a huge spear. On his forehead was an enormous uncut diamond. Scrogga, his son, was with him. Beside them crawled a small and withered figure who looked more like a monkey. King raised his spear, and all the soldiers shouted out, "King! King! King!" He did this 3 times. The sound was like thunder. In the silence that followed, one of the stiff soldiers accidentally dropped his shield. It clattered to the ground. "Would you insult me?" Twala roared. "Scrogga, show how you can use your spear." Scrogga stepped forward and thrust his spear through the unhappy soldier. We watched, petrified with horror. Sir Henry started to get to his feet, but I held him back. "Keep calm," I said. "Our lives depend on it." The king turned to us and greeted us. He asked us why we had come to his land and from where we had come. "We come from the stars to see this land," I said. "He comes from the stars too?" he asked, pointing to Umbopa. "Indeed he does," I said. "Do not ask about things too high for you, O king." "You speak with a loud voice, but the stars are far away. You have seen my power." "And Infidus and Scrogga have told you of our power," I said, "how we kill from far off." "They have told me, but I do not believe. Kill one of those men over there, and I will know it is true." "We shed no blood of man except as punishment," I said. "I insist," Twala said. "You kill a man, or I will not believe your power." "So be it," I declared. "Walk across there, O king, and you will be dead before you reach the gate. I'll send your son, Scrogga." Scrogga, who had seen our power, already jumped up and ran to hide in the hut. Twala frowned. Bring in an ox," he said. I told Sir Henry to shoot the ox. I wanted Twala to know that all of us had power. "I hope I make a good shot," Sir Henry said. "You have to," I told him. If you miss, we're done for." The ox was brought into the compound. Sir Henry took careful aim. Bang! Went the rifle. The ox fell dead. A sound of surprise went up from the thousands of soldiers. "Surely then you tell the truth, white man, ha ha." "We come in peace, O king," I said. "Here's a staff that will let you kill as we kill. Only never lift it against a man, or it shall kill you." I handed him the Winchester. He took it very gingerly and laid it down. Now the one who looked like a monkey, she came forward. This person threw off a furry covering to show the strangest face I've ever seen. It was a woman of great age, shrunken to the size of a child. Her skin was a mass of wrinkles. Her scalp was as bald as the head of a vulture, but her eyes were still alive with fire. She held out her finger with a nail an inch long, and she touched Twala.
"Listen, O king," she said in a thin voice. "I see the future. I see much blood, rivers of blood. I hear soldiers coming from all directions."
This, we figured, was Gagul, the witch doctor of the Kukuana people. She spoke as if in a trance.
"Who raised up the 3 silent ones?"
she asked, pointing toward the 3 distant mountains.
"You don't know, but I know. It was white men. They came for the bright stones, and now these white men of the stars come. They are seeking a lost one. You shall not find him here, O white men. He is not here. You seek the bright stones. But first, there will be blood."
She dragged herself across the ground and pointed her skinny finger at Umbopa.
"You are not here for stones or yellow metal. I think I know you. I smell the blood of you. Yes. You are..."
Before she could finish, she fell to the ground in a fit. She could say no more. Some of the soldiers carried her into the hut. "Gagul has spoken strange words," Twala said. "Perhaps I should kill you all now." I laughed. "We're not easy to kill, King. Would you like to be as dead as that ox over there?" "Do you threaten the king?" "I only speak what is true," I said. "Try to kill us, and you will see." He thought for a minute. "Ma, go in peace, then.
Tonight is the great dance. You will see it. Tomorrow we will decide your fate.
There was nothing we could do now but obey. I motioned to the others to follow me, and we filed past Twala. I made no other gesture but to bow my head slightly as I passed him. We would show no fear, but not run the risk of angering him either. It was a very thin line indeed we had to tread before this strange and bloodthirsty king. Chapter 8. The Witch Hunt. When we returned to our hut, I motioned Infidus to come in with us. It seems to me, Infidus, I said, that Twala is a very cruel man. It is so, my lord. The land cries out with his cruelty. Tonight you will see. At the great witch hunt no man is safe. If the king fears him or wants his cattle, he will be killed. Perhaps I will even die myself. The people are weary of Twala and his cruel ways. Why then don't you overthrow him? If he were killed, Skraga would reign in his place. His heart is even crueler than that of his father. It is too bad that Ignosi, our rightful king, is not here to take over the throne. How do you know that Ignosi is dead? Said a voice behind us. It was Umbopa. What do you mean? Infidus asked. Years ago, when King Imotu was killed, his wife and his son Ignosi ran away. It is said that they died in the mountains. But they did not die. They crossed the mountains and met a wandering tribe in the desert. They traveled many months to the land of the Zulu. When his mother died, Ignosi again wandered. He came to where the white men lived and he learned their wisdom. That is a pretty story, Infidus said, but I do not believe it. There is more, Mbopa said. Ignosi worked as a soldier and a servant. He waited many years. Finally, he met some white men who planned to seek this unknown land. They crossed the burning sand and the high mountains, and they came here in Infidus. You are crazy to talk this way, Infidus said. I am not crazy, Mbopa shouted. I am Ignosi, true king of the Kukuana. He stripped off his loincloth. Around his waist was a tattoo of a large snake. Infidus said. It is my brother's son. It is the king. I am not yet king, my uncle, said Umbopa, or as we now know, Ignosi. But with your help, and the help of these white men, I will be. I will destroy Twala, who killed my father, and Gagool, who drove my mother away. Will you help me? Infidus knelt before Ignosi and took his hand. Ignosi, you are our true king. I will be with you until I die. And will you white men help me? Ignosi said. I will repay you by giving you the shining stones. Oh no, you mistake us, Sir Henry said. I translated for him. Wealth is good, but we do not sell ourselves for diamonds. You have stood by us, and I will stand by you. It will be a pleasure to destroy that evil Twala. I like a good fight, Captain Good said. Only, you must let me wear my trousers. And what of you, old hunter? Ignosi said to me. Umbopa, or Ignosi. I am a man of peace. But I stick with my friends. I will back you up. But I do want the diamonds, if we can get them. Now what is the plan? Tonight is the great distance and witch hunt, Infidus said. Many will die. There will be anger against King Twala. I will speak to the best of the chiefs and win them over. I will have 20,000 men on our side. We will come to speak with you after the dance, if any of us are still alive. At that point, messengers from the king arrived at our hut. They brought 3 shirts of shining chain armor and 3 huge battle axes, gifts to us from Twala. They are magic coats, Infidus said. No spear can pass through them. Wear them tonight, my lords. He left us to rest until the sun went down. We heard the thousands of soldiers marching to the dance. When the moon came up, Infidus returned with 20 men to escort us to the dance. We wore the armor under our regular clothes. We strapped on our revolvers, we took the battle axes, and we went. Again, many soldiers were lined up in the great field. "Why are they so quiet?" Captain Good asked. I translated his question for Infidus. "A shadow of death hangs over them," he answered. Many will be killed tonight. Even you may die. But if we live, our plan may work. The soldiers are angry with the king." Twala now came out of his hut, along with Skraga and Gagul. 12 gigantic and savage-looking men armed with spears and clubs came with them. "All who have evil in your hearts, prepare for judgment," Twala said. "Let the witch hunt begin." 10 old ladies appeared. Their hair was white, their faces painted yellow and white. Snake skins hung down their backs, each carried a forked wand.
"Go,"
Gagul said.
"do as I have taught you. Go and find the evil ones."
With a wild yell, the women danced through the great mass of soldiers.
"I smell an evildoer!"
one of them screamed. She danced faster and faster, and then she stopped dead and stiffened. She crept toward a soldier and pointed at him, touching him with her wand. Instantly, the men on either side grabbed this soldier and brought him forth. "Kill!" the king said. One of the king's guards drove his spear through the poor soldier, while another crushed his skull with a club. "1," counted Twala. In a second, another soldier was dragged forward and killed in the same way. "2," Twala said. He kept counting until 100 bodies were stretched in the dirt. It was the most awful sight I've ever seen. Around midnight, there was a pause. The witch hunters seemed to have worn themselves out, but now, to our surprise, Gagul herself began to dance around the fire. She rushed back and forth, chanting, and then she touched a tall man standing in front of a large group of soldiers. All his men groaned because he was their leader. It didn't matter. He was dragged forward and killed. Gagul continued to dance. She came nearer and nearer to where we were sitting. "I think she's going to point to one of us," Captain Good said. "Nonsense," Sir Henry replied. But she kept inching closer and closer. Her eyes gleamed at us. No doubt about it, she was going to choose one of us to die. Suddenly she rushed forward. She touched Umbopa, who was really Ignosi.
"I smell him out! Kill him! Kill him! Kill him! He is full of evil! Kill him, O king!"
We froze in our places. The mad old hag was the equal of the king in evil-doing. Ignosi was one of them, but in all our dangerous adventures, he had more than proven himself. He was one of us as well. We were just a few against the many, but we had to stand by our friend. Chapter 9, We Give a Sign. There was a pause before the executioners grabbed our friend. I spoke up quickly. "This man is a servant of your guests, O king. By the laws of hospitality, you may not harm him." "Gagul has smelled him out," Twala said. "Gagul says he must die." "I say whoever touches him will die," I shouted. "Seize him," Twala ordered. The fierce executioners moved forward. "Touch him and the king dies," I said. I covered Twala with my revolver. Sir Henry pointed his gun at the leading executioner. Captain Good was aiming at Gagul herself. Twala hesitated. "Put away your magic tubes. I will let him live in the name of hospitality, not because I fear you. Go in peace, white man." "It is well," I said. "We are weary of slaughter and would sleep." We made our way back to our huts. "All that killing makes me feel sick," Sir Henry said. Good added, "If I had any doubts about joining with Ignosi. Those doubts are gone now. I'll be glad to see Twala brought down." "I am grateful to all of you," Ignosi said. We sat in silence, waiting for Infidus, remembering the horrors we had seen. It was almost dawn when Infidus arrived. 6 other chiefs came with him. Each of them, he said, commanded 3,000 soldiers. "They wish to see the sacred snake before they join with you, Ignosi," Infidus said. Ignosi stripped off his girdle again and he showed them the tattoo. He told them the same story he had told Infidus earlier. "What do you say?" Infidus asked them. "Will you rise up against the evil king?" Your words are true, said an old warrior with white hair. But if we rise, it will mean much blood. Since Ignosi is under the protection of these white men, let us see their power. Let us have a sign, so that our men may have faith in the white man's magic. They all nodded. What sign could we give them? I translated for the others. I think I have an idea, Captain Good said. Sailors always carry almanacs, and he got his out now. Look, tomorrow's the 4th of June. On that day, there will be a total eclipse of the sun, visible in Africa. Tell them we will darken the sun just after 1 o'clock. It was a good idea, but what if the almanac was wrong? These predictions are never wrong, Good said. For half an hour, the sun will be completely dark. Let's risk it, Sir Henry said. We will give you a sign, great men of the Kukuanas, I told the chiefs. This day, 1 hour after midday, we will make the sun go out. Darkness will cover the earth. If you can do this, we will follow you, the old chief said. It will be done, I said. Infidus explained that 2 miles from Loo, up on that horseshoe-shaped hill, there was a fort. His soldiers would wait there. Once we had shown the chiefs a sign, we would all go up there and make war on Twala. It is good, I said. Now let us sleep and make ready our magic. The chiefs left. Ignosi turned to me and said, If you can do this wonderful thing, I will repay you. Promise me one thing, Sir Henry said. I translated his words. When you are king, you'll not kill witches or treat your people cruelly as Twala does. That I promise, Ignosi said. None will die without judgment. We ate a big breakfast, not knowing when we'd get any more food, or if. We waited. At noon, Twala would call us for a dance of the village girls. The most beautiful of them, Infidus had told us, would be killed by Scraga as a sacrifice to the stone ones who sat among the 3 peaks beyond. We dressed, again putting on the shirts of chain armor under our clothes. We took our rifles and ammunition. We went back to the king's hut, not really knowing what lay ahead of us. The great field was filled not with soldiers, but with thousands of Kukuana girls. Twala, Scraga, Gagul, and a dozen guards were also there, along with many war chiefs. Welcome, white men from the stars, Twala said. Let the dance begin. The girls danced around the field. They waved palm leaves and white lilies and sang a sweet song. It was pleasant to watch. Then they paused, and one beautiful young woman danced away from the rest. She moved with more grace than our best ballerinas. When she finished her dance, another took her place. Others followed one at a time. Which is the fairest, white men? Twala asked. The first, I said without thinking. And then I remembered that the most beautiful girl would be sacrificed. You are right, the king said. She is fairest, and she must die. Oh, she has pleased us, O king. Why must she die? The figures of stone in those mountains must have a sacrifice. If I do not give them this maiden, it will be bad luck for me. Scraga, get ready. Sharpen your spear. The girl was brought forward by the guards. She screamed and she struggled. Scraga pointed his spear at her. I saw Good reaching for his revolver.
What is your name?
Gagul asked the girl.
I am Fulata. Why must I die? I have done no wrong.
The stone ones demand a sacrifice. Be glad you die by the hand of the king's own son.
Captain Good snorted with disgust. The girl sensed that he was on our side. She tore herself away from the guards and she ran to him. She flung herself down and grasped his beautiful white legs.
Protect me, Father from the stars. Keep me from these cruel men, she cried.
All right, Good said. I'll look after you. Get up. That's a good girl. He lifted her to her feet. Now's the time for the sign, Sir Henry whispered to me. What are you waiting for? I'm waiting for the eclipse, I said. I don't see it beginning. Decided to take a chance anyway. He said, Twala, This shall not be. Let the girl go. Shall not be! He was enraged. Gods, seize those white men! Scrogga, kill the girl! Sir Henry, Good, Ignosi stood beside me with their rifles. Stop! I shouted. If you come one step nearer, we will put out the sun and bring darkness to your land. The men halted.
Liar!
Gagool screeched.
No one can put out the sun! Kill them all!
I looked up at the sky. I hoped, for the sake of all our lives, an eclipse would begin soon. Chapter 10. We prepare for battle. For a minute I could see no darkening of the brilliant light shining from the sun. But then, just as I was losing hope, I saw a faint rim of shadow appear on the bright disk. I lifted my hands and began to recite some lines from an old poem I knew. Sir Henry and Captain Good did the same. We were all pretending to cast a spell over the sun. I heard a deep gasp of fear from the crowd. Look, O King, I said. Look, Gagool. We keep our word. The sun grows dark before your eyes. The sound changed to a groan of terror. Only Gagool was not afraid.
It will pass. I have seen it before. The shadow will pass.
You will see, I said. Too good, I whispered. Keep swearing, friend. The shadow continued to eat up the light. The birds even stopped singing, thinking it was evening. A strange quiet settled on the town. The sun is dying, the boy Scrogga yelled. We shall all die in the dark. He lifted his spear and he drove with all his force at Sir Henry's chest. But he had forgotten the chain armor shirts and the king had given us that we wore under our clothes. His blow bounced off. Sir Henry grabbed the spear and stuck it straight through Scrogga himself. The king's son dropped down dead. At that moment, all the girls ran away in wild confusion. Even the king retreated to his hut, followed by Gagool and his guards. In a minute, we stood alone, ourselves and the lovely victim Fulata, along with Infidus and some of the chiefs. We have given you a sign, chiefs, I said. If you are satisfied, let us take advantage of the darkness and run. We followed Infidus. Captain Good led Fulata by the hand. We stumbled through the gloom. Luckily, Infidus knew all the pathways in the city. He led us onward for an hour. Then the eclipse began to pass and the light returned. We found ourselves outside the town near a large flat-topped hill. It was shaped like a giant horseshoe, with the open side pointed down slope toward the town. On top was a fort where thousands of soldiers were waiting. I had my men bring your things up here, Infidus said. One of the things they had brought was Captain Good's trousers. He was delighted and immediately started to put them on.
Why does my lord cover his beautiful white legs?
Fulata said sadly. Good didn't answer. He fastened his pants around his waist and he looked very happy. He's a modest man and he never liked walking around in his underwear. In half an hour, nearly 20,000 soldiers were gathered in the hilltop fort, the best of the Kukwana army. Infidus called them together and spoke. First he told about Ignosi's father, who had been murdered by Twala. He pointed out how cruel Twala was. He told about our bringing Ignosi over the mountains. He said they must overthrow Twala and make Ignosi king. Then Ignosi made a speech. You must choose between me and the cruel Twala. I am your true king. If anyone denies that, let him step forward and I will fight him first. No one stepped forward. If you join me and fight Twala, I will reward you with oxen, and when I sit on my father's throne, the slaughter of innocent men and women will end. There will be no more witch hunts. You will sleep secure. He pointed down toward the city of Lu. Look, Twala's messengers go out to gather many soldiers. They will try to crush us. Will you stand with me? One of the chiefs lifted his hand. There came the royal salute. Kum! 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 It meant all the soldiers accepted Ignosi as leader. Soon after, we sat down to talk to the chiefs. We could see that Twala was gathering a mighty army. We had 20,000 soldiers, but he would soon have 40,000. Some of his troops were already patrolling around our fort, preparing for the great battle. He won't attack tonight, Infidus said. Twala needs time to prepare. We must work to block the paths up to this fort. We agreed. With all the soldiers helping, we set to work. Wherever there were trails coming up the hills, we piled heaps of rocks. We also collected boulders we could roll down on the enemy. Just before sundown, a messenger arrived from Twala. He carried a palm branch to show he came in peace. The king says you must surrender now, and he will give you mercy. If you don't give up, terrible things will happen to you. What mercy will Twala show us? I asked out of curiosity. 1 in 10 of you will die as punishment. The rest will go free. But the white man who killed Scrogga must die. Also he who pretends to be the new king, and the traitor Infidus, must die. These are the merciful words of Twala. I talked to the others and then said to the messenger, Go back to Twala, you dog. Ignosi is the king of the Kukuana. He will not surrender. By tomorrow, Twala's corpse will stiffen in the sun. The messenger laughed. You do not frighten me. You white men will die with all the others. Just wait. He went back down to the town. Darkness fell over our fort. We looked out over the thousands of men with their spears gleaming in the moonlight. I don't think we can hold out against Twala's army, told Sir Henry. It'll be a nasty fight, that's sure. I'd rather die fighting than any other way. Luck goes with the brave. Whatever happens, I'll be in the middle of it. I think Sir Henry actually liked the idea of fighting. I sure didn't. Just before dawn, we began to prepare. Each of us put on the shirt of chain armor. Sir Henry dressed himself like a native warrior. He wore a leopard skin cloak and a plume of black ostrich feathers. Infidus gave him a battle axe and an iron shield like the Kukuana used. Sir Henry also wore his revolver. He made a magnificent sight indeed. Good and I each carried a spear and a shield, but I certainly didn't know how to use them. We also had our rifles. After breakfast, we met Infidus and his soldiers, the Greys. This group would wait to be sent where they were most needed once the battle began. We watched Twala's men streaming out of Lu like columns of ants. One group marched to the right, one to the left, the third came straight toward us. They're going to attack us on 3 sides at once, Infidus said. We began to prepare to meet the attack. Chapter 11, Twala attacks. The 3 columns of Twala's soldiers moved steadily towards us. About a quarter mile away, the middle group stopped to let those on the right and the left take up their positions and surround us. Captain Good, Sir Henry, and I took up our rifles, and we all began to fire in the masses of soldiers in front. We probably shot 10 men before we heard a roar from our right and then from our left. The other groups of enemy soldiers were attacking. Now they attacked from all directions. Shooting our rifles at them was like throwing pebbles at the waves on the beach. They crashed in our first line of defense, shouting, Twala! 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 Our men fought back, shouting, Ignosi! 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 The struggle went back and forth. Knives flew through the air. Spears clashed. They had more men than we did, and their troops pushed ours slowly back. Many were killed and wounded on both sides. For a while, it seemed as if our men would be defeated. Sir Henry had been nervously watching the struggle from our lookout point. Now he leaped up and he rushed straight into the battle. The soldiers saw his tall figure and shouted, Here is the elephant! They called him Elephant because he was so big. Now our men began to fight harder. They pushed Twala's soldiers down the hill. Our troops on the left also defeated their enemy. We were feeling pretty good when we suddenly saw that on our right, our men had been beaten. Twala's soldiers came running across the top of the horseshoe-shaped hill. Ignosi issued orders. The Greys, who had not been in the fight, jumped up. Since I was in the middle of them, I had to join them. I hate getting into a fight. I had no choice. We charged toward Twala's men. I remember the noise of the shields, the spears crashing together. I remember a huge Kukuana soldier rushing straight at me with a bloody spear. If I stood where I was, I would be dead. As he came near, I dropped to the ground in front of him. He tripped over me and tumbled into the dust. Before he could get back on his feet, I shot him with my revolver. A second later, someone knocked me on the head. That was the last I remembered. When I came to, Captain Good was standing over me with a gourd of water. "How do you feel, old fella?" he asked. I got up and shook myself before I answered. "Well, pretty well, thank you," I said. "They carried you in. We thought you were done for," Good said. "Not this time. How did the battle end, anyway?" "And for now, we've pushed them back at every point. It was a dreadful struggle. We lost 2,000 men. They lost 3,000. Look." He pointed to where a long line of soldiers were carrying stretchers made out of animal skins. On each one of them was a wounded man. They were brought back to the medicine man, who examined them and treated their wounds as well as best they could. I joined Sir Henry, Ignosi, and introduced some of the chiefs who were talking over our plans now. "Oh, thank heaven you're alive, Quatermain," Sir Henry said. "I can't make out what Ignosi wants to do. It looks like Twala means to starve us out." "It won't take long," Infidus said. "Our water is almost gone. Before night we will be thirsty. What do you think we should do?" "What do you say, Ignosi?" "I will give my decision after I hear your advice." "Well, we have three choices. We can stay here and starve. We can try to run away to the north, or we're going to attack Twala. I think we should attack. We should do it at once before our wounds grow stiff. If we wait, more troops will join Twala's forces. Even some of the captains may change their minds and switch sides." Everyone agreed with me. The real decision was for Ignosi to make. He was the king. He thought it over for a few moments. "My heart is fixed," he said at last. "I will strike at Twala. Fortune will decide what happens." "What plan will we follow then?" I asked. "See how this hill curves around on both sides. Infidus will take his troops, the Greys, and he march down the middle into the valley. Twala will send his soldiers to fight the Greys, but they will be protected on the sides by the hills. Twala can attack only in front." We all looked down the valley to where he was pointing. "The elephant, Sir Henry, will go with the first of the Greys. When Twala sees his mighty battle axe, he will be afraid. I must stay with the second line. If I were killed right away, you would have no king to fight for." "It is well, O king," Infidus said. "While Twala's eyes are fixed on his battle, part of our men would creep along the hill on the right and on the left. They will charge down onto the sides of Twala's troops and destroy them." Infidus went off to prepare the plan of attack. For an hour we all rested and ate our lunch. When it was time to go, I met with Captain Good and Sir Henry. "Goodbye, you fellas," Good said. "I'm going with the troops on the right. I hope we meet again when it's over." "For myself, I don't expect to see the sun rise tomorrow," Sir Henry said. "I'll go with the Greys, who will fight to the finish, as will I. Hope the two of you live long enough to get those diamonds." We all shook hands, not knowing if this was the last time we'd see each other. Infidus led Sir Henry to the lead row of the Greys. I took up my position by Ignosi in the second rank. It was time for our fate to be decided. Chapter 12. The Great Battle. The groups of soldiers who were to attack from the sides moved out along the hill. They would keep out of sight so that they would surprise Twala's troops. Those of us who would attack in the center got ready. The Greys would go first. I would go with the second group, the Buffaloes, who would back up the Greys if they needed our help. Both of these groups were fresh and eager to fight. Infidus spoke to his men. He promised them honor and rewards of cattle would go to those who fought bravely. He told them that Sir Henry, the white warrior from the stars, would fight at their side. I looked at the faces of the Greys. They were brave soldiers. They would have to fight to the death in order to save our army. I knew that none of these men... and I knew most of these men would not return from the battle. But none of them showed fear. None of them. They were ready to do their duty. "There's your king," Infidus shouted, pointing to Ignosi. "Go and fight and fall for him. Shame will be on the man who shrinks from battle. Let us go and smash Twala's forces." For a moment, there was silence. Then, like the sound of distant waves, came a sound from all the troops before us. They were tapping their spears against their shields. The sound grew louder. It became a huge noise echoing off the mountains. And then it slowly died out. All the soldiers shouted out, "Goom! Goom! Goom!" as a salute to the king. Ignosi lifted his battle axe in reply. The Greys marched off in 3 lines. When they had started down the hill, Ignosi put himself at the head of the buffaloes. I went with him, praying that I would return in one piece. We could see the Greys ahead of us. They were marching down the grassy slope between the 2 arms of the hill. Twala's troops were hurrying out to greet them. The Greys were formed into 3 lines at the mouth of the small valley. We stood 100 yards behind them on higher ground, ready to help them if they needed it. All of Twala's army came forward, but because the space was narrow, only a single group of soldiers could attack. They had to come at the Greys head on. For a minute, Twala's men stopped. They didn't want to fight the Greys, who were the strongest soldiers of all the Kukwanas. We could see Twala himself come up and give an order. The first group of the soldiers gave a shout and charged up the slope. The Greys didn't move until the attackers were 40 yards away. Then they all threw their knives, which rattled against the shields of the enemy. The Greys gave a terrible shout and sprang forward into the advancing troops of Twala. The crashing together sounded like thunder. The points of the spears flashed in the sun. They fought fiercely. In a few moments, the entire group of Twala's soldiers were destroyed. The Greys lost a third of their men. Only 2 lines remained. They waited for another attack. I was delighted to catch the sight of the yellow beard of Sir Henry among them. He was still alive, at least. We moved up to the place of the first attack. Dead and dying soldiers lay all around. The ground was soaked with blood. Now a second group of Twala's soldiers, wearing big white feathers on their heads, came forward. Again, the Greys rushed forward to meet them. This time the battle went on for a longer time. The attackers fought furiously. They seemed to be pushing our men back. We were about ready to move up and help them when we heard Sir Henry's voice shouting above the noises of the battle. He waved his battle axe high. The Greys fought harder. They began to move forward, spearing Twala's men as they went. "They win a second time," Ignosi said. Twala's men broke and ran down the slope. The Greys cheered and waved their spears. But now only 600 of the 3,000 remained standing. The rest lay on the ground. I saw Sir Henry and Infidus. They chased Twala's troops down the hill, but then another group of fresh enemy soldiers attacked. They surrounded the band of Greys, and the fight began again. I've never liked to fight. I would rather keep my blood inside me, thank you. And now, for the first time in my life, I felt an urge to go into battle. "Why do we just stand here, Ignosi?" I asked. "Our men can't hold out much longer against Twala's troops." "The time has now come," Ignosi said. He lifted his battle axe. He gave a signal to his men, and screaming the Kukwana battle cry, we all rushed forward. I can't tell what followed. I remember a great shouting, a wild clash of spears. We broke through Twala's men. We joined the Greys. I found myself standing beside Sir Henry. Again and again, Twala's men charged. Each time we beat them back. Infidus was a sturdy old warrior and moved around coolly, giving orders and helping out where the fighting was hardest. Sir Henry also fought well. No one could stand up to the slash of his battle axe. Every time an enemy soldier challenged him, he swung. The axe crashed through the other man's shield and cut him down. Suddenly we heard a cry, "Twala! Twala! Twala!" There was the huge, one-eyed king himself. He also wore chain armor and carried a battle axe. "Where is the white man who killed my son Skraga? See if you can kill me!" He threw a knife at Sir Henry. Sir Henry saw it coming and caught it on his shield. Twala leaped forward and swung his axe. It crashed into Sir Henry's shield, knocking him to his knees. At that moment, Twala's troops let loose a shout of surprise. From both sides, our men were pouring down the slopes. The troops that had snuck along the hill were now charging. Twala's men couldn't stand up against the attack. They had already lost many of their own troops in battle, and now, attacked on both sides, they turned and ran. In a few minutes, the plain between the hill and Loo was filled with enemy soldiers running away. But when they had retreated, we found that only 95 of the Greys still remained at all. All the rest had been killed. "This battle will be spoken of by your children," Infidus said. "You have kept your honor, men." In the distance, we saw one of the last of Twala's men lift his spear and thrust it at Captain Good. Good fell. The Kukwana soldier speared him again and again. We rushed forward, fearing he was dead. When we reached him, he said, "This is quite excellent armor," and then he fainted. We saw that he had a knife wound in his leg, but the chain armor had saved his life. We placed him on a stretcher and carried him with us. We joined Ignosi for the march into Lu. We wanted to capture Twala if we could. At the town, Ignosi sent word that he would forgive any soldier who laid down his weapons and surrendered. We marched inside and came to the great courtyard before the king's hut. It was deserted except for Twala himself. He sat there with only Gagul to keep him company. All his friends had left him alone. "You have defeated my army," he said to Ignosi as we advanced. "What will you do to me?" "The same that you did to my father," Ignosi said. "A Kukwana king must be allowed to die fighting," Twala said. "It is so," Ignosi said. "Choose who you would fight. It cannot be me. A king can only fight in war." Twala looked around with his one eye. What if he chooses me, I thought. I would not fight him for the world. "I will fight the elephant," Twala said. "Was the white man afraid?" "I'll fight with you," Sir Henry said. "You'll see who's afraid." Twala laughed. As the sun set, each took up a battle axe. They circled around each other. Sir Henry swung first. He missed and almost fell. Twala brought his axe down with terrible force, but Sir Henry was able to get his shield in the way. They battered against each other, each catching the blows on his shield. The excitement grew. The soldiers shouted and groaned at each stroke. Captain Good recovered and began to cheer for Sir Henry. "That was a good one," he said. "Give it to him, old man." Sir Henry let loose a massive blow that smashed through Twala's shield, cut his armor, and wounded him on the shoulder. Twala yelled in pain and struck back. His blow cut through the handle of Sir Henry's battle axe and struck him in the face. Twala leaped forward towards Sir Henry, who had no weapon to protect himself. I shut my eyes. When I opened them, the two men were wrestling in the dirt. Sir Henry was able to grab hold of Twala's battle axe. The two men fought over it like wildcats. Sir Henry wrenched the axe loose. He jumped to his feet. Twala came at him and thrust a knife at Sir Henry's chest. The chain armor held again. Twala came forward again. Sir Henry swung with his axe with all his might. A roar of excitement went up from the troops. The axe cut right through Twala's neck. His head fell to the ground and rolled to Ignosi's feet. His corpse collapsed in the dust. I took the great uncut diamond from Twala's brow and I handed it to Ignosi. "Take it," I said. "You are now the king of the Kukwanas." Ignosi put the jewel on and raised his spear toward his soldiers. They all raised their spears and shouted, "Kum! Kum! Kum!" The battle was over. Chapter 13. When the fight was finished, some of the soldiers carried Sir Henry and Captain Good into Twala's hut. I joined them. We were all so tired we couldn't stand up. My head was aching from the blow that had knocked me out that morning. Because we had saved her life, the beautiful Fulata offered to help us, especially Captain Good. We took off our shirts of chain armor and we found that we were all badly bruised underneath. The armor stopped spears from going through us, but it didn't keep them from hurting. Fulata mixed up a plaster of green leaves that made us feel a little bit better. Good had a hole through the fleshy part of his leg. He had lost a great deal of blood. Sir Henry had a deep cut on his jaw from Twala's battle axe. Captain Good knew how to stitch up cuts, and he was able to clean out Sir Henry's wounds and his own and close them up. He smeared antiseptic ointment on them and tied them with a handkerchief. We drank some strong soup that Fulata had made, and then we lay down on the piles of fur rugs. Even though we were tired, sleep was difficult. Outside the hut, we could hear the wailing of women whose husbands and brothers and sons had died in the war that day. 20,000 Kukwana soldiers had been killed. My sleep, as I said, wasn't peaceful. I kept dreaming about the awful sights of that battle. When we awoke, we found that Captain Good had a high fever. He was lightheaded and spitting up blood. He must have had an internal injury. Infidus came by to see how we were. He said all the soldiers considered Sir Henry to be the greatest warrior in all the world. No one else could have fought all day and then killed the great Twala afterward. All of Twala's men have pledged their loyalty to Ignosi, Infidus told us. Ignosi is now the king of all our people. Later in the morning, Ignacy himself came by. He wore the royal diamond on his forehead. I couldn't help remembering when, as Imbopa, he had come to us months before, looking to join us on our journey. "Hail, King," I said. "I am king because of the help I received from you three. I want to thank you." "What will you do now with Gagool?" I asked. "I will kill her. She made the land evil." "She knows much," I said. "She knows about the silent ones in the mountains and about the place where your kings are buried. Most of all, she knows about the diamonds." "You are right. I promised I would help you to find the bright stones. I will let Gagool live if she will guide you." When Ignacy left, I checked on Good. He was out of his mind with fever. He remained very ill for the next 4 days. I think if it had not been for Filato, who helped nurse him back, he would have died for sure. Ignacy ordered that no one go near the hut so that Good could rest in quiet. Only Sir Henry and I went in to check on him. On the 5th night of his illness, I went as usual. He was no longer tossing and turning. He lay on the cushion very still. I thought he was dead, and I began to cry.
"Hush,"
Fulata said.
"he needs rest."
Moving closer, I saw that Good was not dead. He was fast asleep. The worst was over then. Well, my friend would live. Captain Good quickly regained his strength. Sir Henry told him all that he owed to Fulata. Good took me with him to see her so that I could interpret. "Tell her," he said, "that I owe her my life. I will never forget her kindness to me."
"But you saved my life," Fulata said. "I am happy to repay you."
A few days later, Ignacy held a gathering. All the Kukwana people came to proclaim him king. He gave each of the Greys who was still alive a present of cattle and promoted each to be an officer in his army. He thanked the three of us personally. "Everyone in my kingdom should treat these white men with respect," he declared. After the ceremony was over, we asked him if he had found out anything about King Solomon's mines. "3 great figures sit in those mountains at the end of Solomon's road," he said. "Behind them is a cave where our kings are buried. Inside the cave is a secret room. Only Gagool knows how to enter. I don't know what is in it. There is a legend that many years ago a white man found great wealth in that room. But the woman who led him there betrayed him. He was driven back to the mountains. No one has entered that room since." "Well, the story must be true," I said. "We found the white man in the mountains over Jose Silvestre." "If we can find the room, you can take as many of those bright stones as you want," Ignacy said. "But only Gagool can show it to you. If she will not do so, she will die." He ordered the guards to bring Gagool into the hut. When they left her there, she collapsed. She's more like a pile of rags than a person now.
"Beware of my magic, Ignacy,"
she said. "Did your magic save Twala?" he asked. "I want you to show us a room where the shining stones are." She laughed.
None but I know that room. And I will never tell.
"If you don't tell, I will kill you."
"You would not dare. If you kill me, you will be cursed forever."
Ignacy took a spear and pushed it into the heap of rags until it pricked Gagool's skin. The old woman screamed,
"Ah, let me live! Let me live! I will show you."
"It is well," Ignacy said. "Tomorrow you'll go Linfadus and my white brothers. If you fail, you will die."
"I will not fail, but evil will touch any man who goes to that place. A white man went there once, led by another woman named Gagool. He died alone in the mountains."
"That was many years ago," Ignacy said.
"Maybe it was my mother's mother who told me about it. But her name was Gagool, too. You will see. All of you will see the evil that comes to those who enter the place of death."
Her laugh brought a chill to my bones. I wanted to find the diamonds, but I wondered even more about the legend of the mines that than I did about the jewels and the other treasures that might lie before us. I knew that Sir Henry was even more anxious about his brother than any of us were about the riches or the legend. We had to press on. Our very natures as men demanded it from us. Yet I couldn't help thinking with a chill that seemed to come from my very bones of what horrors still lay ahead of us.